I'm not interested.
Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Tomb Raider? Stick around and find out. Bum ba dum bum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum bum ba dum bum 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 ba dum bum bum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum ba dum. All right. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review of Tomb Raider. Just a little background on me and the Tomb Raider franchise, the IP, anyway. I played much of the first two games on the original PlayStation, using cheat codes, though. I was never good at those games. I played a few hours of the recent reboot that was out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I watched all of the Angelina Jolie movies, but none of them really grabbed me, you know. I came into this movie without any allegiance, really, to the intellectual property. I just wanted a good movie experience, which I did not get, unfortunately. This is about my least favorite kind of review to record. I love talking about things I really enjoyed. I think people connect largely based on common interests, common things that they commonly love. And yet there's even, you know, some passion and strong opinions that can make a negative review more interesting for me to record or for people to watch or listen to. But a movie or something that I'm reviewing that isn't cringeworthy or really truly frustrating, but is just kind of there and uninteresting, it's just no fun to talk about. But here I go. The synopsis for this one, this is an interesting synopsis too. This is WB's synopsis of this movie. It reads, Lara Croft is the fiercely independent daughter of an eccentric adventurer who vanished when she was scarcely a teen. Now a young woman of 21 without any real focus or purpose, Lara navigates the chaotic streets of trendy East London as a bike courier, barely making the rent, and takes college courses, rarely making it to class. I don't think that was ever mentioned once in the movie, that she takes college courses, rarely making it to class. She even says at one point to someone, I never went to university. So that's weird. Anyway, determined to forge her own path, which I guess she is by default determined to, you know, I don't know. She doesn't want to accept she refuses to take the reins of her father's global empire, it says, just as staunchly as she rejects the idea that he's truly gone. So she won't, accept the inheritance that's been left, you know, after her father disappeared. Advised to face the facts and move forward after 7 years without him, even Lara can't understand what drives her to finally solve the puzzle of his mysterious death. I, as a viewer, did not understand what drove her to finally solve the puzzle of her father's mysterious death. Anyway, I'll get to that later. Going explicitly against his final wishes, she leaves everything she knows behind in a search for her dad's last known destination, a fabled tomb on a mythical island that might be somewhere off the coast of Japan. But her mission will not be an easy one. Just reaching the island will be extremely treacherous. Suddenly, the stakes couldn't be higher for Lara, who, against the odds and armed with only her sharp mind, blind faith, and inherently stubborn spirit, must learn to push herself beyond her limits as she journeys into the unknown. That's another point, that it must learn to push herself beyond her limits. Let's come back to that. If she survives this perilous adventure, it could be the making of her, earning her the name Tomb Raider. All right. Interesting write-up. Okay, so this is, just in terms of talking about the script, the story, the pacing, the tone in general, it's an archaeological adventure. Pretty serious tone throughout, or at least it was lacking jokes. It lacked dramatic weight for me. Far more than story, I like interesting characters with motivations that I can relate to. I didn't get any of that from this experience, and didn't really get what I felt was an interesting or creative, I don't want to say creative, I'm sure there was creativity involved, but unpredictable story. There were just several kind of beats that I called out, because I've just, you know, you watch enough movies, you kind of see some of these things coming. The first 30 minutes felt like, to me, like time wasted on establishing Lara as an attractive athlete. Mostly as an athlete, but there were like a few beats here that were just like, oh, guys are nervous talking to her and stuff like that. And there's brief nervous flirting between her and two, maybe arguably three characters that went nowhere because there are no no romances were developed. They kind of like briefly touched on her as being this attractive woman who's kind of just unapproachable, untouchable by men, and yet there was no romantic relationship. Sometimes when they set that up, then they'll bring a character into the story who is able to break through where other people were not romantically. But they didn't do anything with that. They even introduced a character that I suppose could have filled that role, but he was like, I don't even know what his purpose was in the movie. Anyway, I think they could have established her athleticism in passing, but instead they used these two extended sequences, one a boxing sequence and one like this bike race sequence that I just don't think were needed in the movie. I wanted more time spent on her relationship with her father, because that's what drives her to take on her quest. And maybe you could look at that and say, well, then that would make the movie too slow at the beginning. There's non-linear stuff you can do. You could start with an action scene where she's in the thick of crap going on in the jungle, and then just do the little, 7 days earlier, and then fill a sense. There's ways you can get to the action right away to grab people's attention, and then in a non-linear fashion fill in some of those character motivation and background details as you move forward. So anyway, I just felt like they could have spent the time in a way that would have been more effective in drawing me into the characters in the story. The action also felt very convenient to me, and by that I mean that Laura in this movie often seemed to survive distant falls, tumbles, and gunfire through pure luck, rather than, through her own capability, I mean, she's definitely capable. She was capable before going on this adventure, but it seemed like even, the most capable person could only be surviving what she's going through, and she herself only surviving what she's going through because of pure luck of where her foot falls when she and jumps to, catch her balance and go to somewhere else, or go over and catch this thing, and things are crumbling beneath her at just the right pace, So it's that kind of thing, And maybe that won't bother you, but I was just, after a while, I was just like, boy, It wasn't quite like what I felt like in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I apologize, it's not that I want these movies to feel like the Indiana Jones movies, that they just kind of come to mind a little bit, with this kind of setting. But Crystal Skull to me felt like it was a harmless roller coaster ride. No one was ever in any danger, just swinging around on vines and tilting on giant stone traps and stuff, but no one was ever in any trouble in that movie. It wasn't quite that extreme. I still felt like she was at least exerting effort, but like I said, the danger, it just seemed to all be kind of very convenient. Let's see. Oh yeah, she also went through little or no character change that I could see in this movie. She learned new information about her dad, but that didn't seem to change in a really significant way. I didn't see her changing her feelings about her dad. She just kind of stayed in this kind of dark, bitter funk for a lot of the movie. Even after a brief moment where she came out of that, then she kind of went back into it and stuff. And so anyway, she learned new info about her dad. She, at the very end of the movie, decided on a different course for her life than she had been on in the final scenes, but that change just happened kind of suddenly at the end. It wasn't through gradual change in character throughout the movie like I would really prefer. And also, in the recent reboot of the game series, her first adventure on this island, from what I played and then what I heard, I haven't played the whole game, but from what I understand and what I experienced, her first adventure on this island, which they seem to take a number of beats from, acted as like a crucible where she was refined and she was molded. She was forced to become more capable and she was hardened, But the action in this movie didn't seem to serve that purpose, and it would have been cool if it would have done that, if she would have started out as maybe athletic but still maybe more noticeably undisciplined and more noticeably just soft in some way, and then she would have been hardened by her experiences, by the trauma of what she went through, on the island in this movie. That would have been a more interesting journey for me in watching her, but she already kind of seemed capable, and I would have liked to have seen her react emotionally to these really intense, life-threatening circumstances far more than she did, which basically just, involved some crying out and some, expressions of pain now and then, certainly, but not to the degree that I would have just liked a more psychologically realistic reaction where she is really genuinely getting psychologically traumatized by being wounded so badly and being in these circumstances where she has no idea how she's going to get home, having to kill someone. I mean, they really could have gone further. I could tell that they, in some ways, were going a little bit in that direction, but they didn't go fully there like I wanted them to. And I think I remember that first game kind of getting the same criticism, like, oh, they were going for this, but they didn't fully go there. So anyway. What else? Oh, the cast. Nothing really to say there. I felt like the cast was all fine, but they didn't seem to have very interesting characters to work with. As far as the stunts and visuals go, there was, it was pretty standard. CG that looks like CG, a standard action visual quality for a movie with a decent budget for it. So there you go. As far as like relevance, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes that stood out to me that, I think might bring about worthwhile thought or conversation? No, I'm sorry. I mean, I'd have to dig way more than I want to. And this tends to happen in movies that don't hold my interest. I just tend to, if there are themes in there, not see them as readily because I'm just working to stay checked in to the experience, And but this movie didn't seem to want to say anything thematically, and like I said, I was struggling to maintain my interest. So, yeah, I just nothing popped out of me. Anyway, I have no idea what your tastes in movies are, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Pater, skip. Maybe if you were especially drawn to archaeological adventure stories, then this would scratch an itch for you. But it won't do anything with its story, characters, or action to make it stand out in any way for you. It's super forgettable for you, Pater. And yet, if they make a sequel that looks more interesting, you might rent this one to get caught up on the overarching subplot that they introduce near the end, which will likely be kind of a through line if this becomes a renewed movie franchise. In the meantime, dude, stay home, play some Far Cry 3 or 4 to scratch the itch to fight bad guys in a jungle mountainous environment. It's rated PG-13 for sequences of violence and action and for some language. Alright, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please consider supporting this channel by becoming a Spirit Blade Insider, which grants you exclusive monthly behind-the-scenes content. For more info, you can go to our About page at spiritblade.com, where you'll also find our audio dramas and our weekly podcast, again, over at spiritblade.com. And finally, guys, there's a ton more content and community over at christiangeekcentral.com, so I hope you'll join us there soon as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.